What's up, guys? Keith here, coming at you from a Carolina Mountain Lights workshop here in Candler, North Carolina. And I want to do a little how-to video on the way I built some of the props for my 2015 light show. And this how-to video is going to involve the use of heavy gauge steel wire. And I built stars, pixel spinners, Bethlehem star, multi-level stars, all out of this heavy gauge wire. This here is one of the smaller stars that I built. This is a 16-incher here. You can see this thing is very heavy duty. This is 9-gauge galvanized steel wire. And I like to use this wire for several reasons. One, because it's strong. Two, because it's galvanized, so it resists rust. And three, because it's very inexpensive. The kind of wire I use, it's called oak. 9-gauge galvanized steel wire. I bought this on sale from Walmart sometime around the 1st of January, I believe. $6.62 a roll. That's a 50-foot roll. So with taxes, you can calculate it out to about $7 a roll. They had free shipping for anything over 50 bucks. So I bought enough to go over 50 bucks, so I got the free shipping as well. Now, the star I'm going to do today for this how-to video is going to be a little over 24-inch star. So it'll take about 11 foot of this to make that. So if you calculate it out, it's going to come to around $1.50 to make a 24-inch star frame. Obviously that's not including the lights, but you can see how inexpensive it is. So let's get started. Okay, first off we'll go over what you're going to need for this project. Obviously the first thing you're going to need is the wire. You're also going to need a couple of pair of heavy-duty pliers. And I stress heavy-duty because this is very strong wire. Can be pretty difficult to bend. I have a pair of what they call flat jaw pliers here. Some people call them welding pliers. I found that these work pretty good for me as far as the second pair. Also, you're going to want some cable clamps. Now you may find something that you like better to use for the clamping down of the wire, but I found that these work pretty good. This whole jar of 225 runs about $5 at Home Depot. That's about 2 cents a piece, so very cheap. Whenever you start using these, first thing you're going to want to do is turn them upside down. You want the flat part at the bottom so you get more pressure on the wire holding it down. And here in a minute you'll see why, because this is, as I said, very heavy duty wire and it's going to be hard to hold down. And then last, you're probably going to want a pry bar and screwdriver. You'll find certain times in this you might need a screwdriver for lifting up the wire to get a zip tie on it or something. Pry bar to take up the clamps when you get through. Starting out here, you're going to want to find a good starting point. And this will depend a lot on how you want to finish this when you get through with it. Myself, I just recently bought an inexpensive Harbor Freight flux core welder that I'll be using for any future projects on this. But up till now, I've been using zip ties to hold it together. So you got to think at the end, you're going to want the two ends when they meet to overlap so you can zip tie them together. And you might think zip ties are not going to work too well holding this heavy gauge of a wire together, but you'd be surprised, they work pretty well for me. Now, I guess I should go into this template I'm using here. As you can see, I have different size stars drawn out here. Gives me good straight lines to follow. There are videos on YouTube that give you instructions on drawing a geometrically perfect star. I highly suggest doing that. So once you do your template, you can do stars all day long. But once you do those stars, you want to know that they're perfect as they can be anyway. Some of this wire, or some of these straight runs, you can straighten out the wire by hand. It is very strong, it is very hard to bend, but it can be done by hand when you're working with longer lengths. Since you have this template here, you have the straight lines already in place. You can lay it down on there and just keep bending till you get it as straight as you want it. I'm pretty particular myself. Call it the OCD in me, I guess. Once you've picked out your starting place and get your first run of wire straightened out, this is where you're going to want to clamp it down. Guess I should have mentioned one of the things that you're going to need is a hammer. Kind of hard to nail these things in without one. Okay, that gets the starting point in place. As you can see, the cable clamp will bend down over that wire and hold it down very tightly. And here's where you're going to be making your first bend. I'll show you the technique I use. And yes, it is a pain to move this big roll of wire around. However, you definitely want to continue one solid piece of wire all the way through. So it's pretty much a necessity. Take your regular pliers and get your positioning on it. Exactly where you want to bend. Then I take my flat jaw pliers, grab it, start bending. Now this bend, you may want to get this bend as sharp as you can to make it nice and neat. But what I like to do well, if I can get a hold of it, is take, bend it all the way in, and bend it back out to position. This will give you a nice sharp edge up here. Straighten out everything around the edge. And now you're working on your second run here. Each corner of this thing you're going to want to clamp down. It'll make it a whole lot easier. Good solid point to work from for your next run. In case you hadn't figured it out yet, for a star, you obviously have 5 runs yet to do here. Now some people will ask, why not just do the outline of the star? Why are you doing a crossover? It's very simple. Makes it that much stronger. If you just do the outline of the star, you have nothing in the middle here to support it. Doing a crossover, zip tying the crosses when you get to them, makes it a whole lot stronger. Like I said, I'm a little OCD here, so I'm pretty particular about how straight I make these things. Okay, we're down to the second bend now. And yep, like I told you, it's a real pain to drag this roller around, but it's pretty much necessary. So, find a place you want to bend with your first pair of pliers. And take a flat jaws and bend number 2 here. Okay, we'll go ahead and clamp this corner down. One thing I forgot to mention, I have a very large workshop. I have the luxury of having an 8-foot by 8-foot wooden table here I can work on. Once I get through with this, I'll show you all the templates I have drawn out on this table. It makes it very easy for me to drive nails into it, pull them out and drive more. If you don't have the luxury of something like this, it's very easy to create your own temporary little 4x4 table, 4x8, whatever. Just anything that you can nail your clamps into. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll do bend number 3 here. To give you an idea of how thick 9-gauge steel wire is, think of a heavy-duty coat hanger. It's about twice as thick as that. You know, heavy-duty coat hangers, they can get pretty thick. But this is very strong wire and very cheap. So I highly recommend it. I'll show you some of the other things that I've built with this after we get through with this how-to demonstration. Okay. Clamp number 4 in place here. Sorry for the camera moving around there. I had to set it up here on the table. It's obviously going to bounce a little bit. As far as time to do one full star, it'll take you probably about 15 minutes once you get set up and all your necessary items in place. So that's another positive to it. It doesn't take that long to make one. Now when you get into multi-level stars, Bethlehem star, spinners, those can take a good bit longer. I think it took me probably 2 hours to bend out my spinner. And you'll see why whenever I show it to you. I think my Bethlehem star took even longer than that. There's a lot more bends to it. Now, as far as bending these corners here, anybody knows that if you bend metal back and forth enough times, it will break. And I have broken this a couple of times. I think out of all the things that I've made, I may have broken it twice. So it's hard to do, but you can break it. Which means you should be careful whenever you're bending these beyond where you want them to be and then bringing it back. Alright, we're almost there now. Now we're at the point now where we need to start thinking about how we're going to end this thing, because we're going to have to put the ends together. See, this is where I started it, and this is where I'll end it. So what I'm going to do now is figure out the distance from this corner to about 2 inches past the start here. I just take my pliers and kind of lay them on there, get a point, take that point over here, and this is where I can cut my wire. I can finally get this thing out of the way. Bend down here. Okay, once we get this positioned real good here, we're definitely going to want to clamp down this last part, because you want everything in place solid when you do the final adjustment. And put your zip ties on. Because say we have a 2-inch crossover here, so we're gonna want 3 to 4 zip ties on here to hold it in good and solid. We're gonna have to get this one clamp here out of the way so we can do that. I guess that's one thing I should have included in my list of things that you need to do this, are the zip ties. I use just the standard 4-inch zip ties. And as I said earlier, you'll be surprised how well these things hold when you put them on correctly and use enough of them. On a connection like this, I usually try to use 4. And you're also going to find that you'll get additional support whenever you put your lights on here. That's going to make it even that much more solid. And if you want to use more than 4, you can. Depends on how much of a overlap you have here. We're just going to do 4 today. Take the pliers and get them as tight as possible without breaking them. Those of you that have used zip ties quite a bit for tying on lights, you know that you can push the limits on it. They will break. All right, next we want to zip tie these 5 crossovers here. We want to do this before we take up the clamps, so we'll know we're still on line and everything's lined up perfect. Or as perfect as we can get it. And I mentioned to you earlier on the things that you'll need for this project is have a screwdriver with you. The reason for that is if you're working with the smaller stars where the clamps are closer together, this wire tends to be clamped down pretty tight on the wood, and sometimes you'll have to take a screwdriver and run it under there so you can lift it up enough to put your zip tie on. But we're doing a larger star here, so it's not a problem here. Okay, we'll take and tighten these down. Okay, at this point we have a completed star. Double check your straightness before you're ready to take it up. We look like we're good to go. So we'll start popping these clamps off of here. I like to just take one side of them out and turn them out of the way. I'll use my pry bar when I get through to take them up the rest of the way. This just allows me to get it up. And there we have a completed star. You can see it's pretty solid. It's going to be even more solid when you put the lights on. Now, as far as cost of this thing, depends on the type of lights you put on it. If you're just using incandescent lights, you can get a $2 box of ink cans, strap them on here, and you can build this 26-inch star for under $4. Now, that's a pretty good deal for a good solid star like this. Well, now I'll give you a little idea of some of the other things that I built with this technique. This here is a snowflake that I built. Snowflakes, I do not recommend using this technique on. I did about 5 of these. There are a whole lot of bends doing a snowflake, and it takes a couple of hours to do one of these things. My opinion, it's not worth it. I still use these. They turned out nice and all. But I ended up going with a 5/8 inch square PVC to make my snowflakes with. So I made 5 of these with this technique, and the other 11 I used PVC. PVC worked great. I'll try to do a video on the process of that later on. This is a multi-level star that I made with this technique. Uses the same technique on each star. You make three different sizes, descending sizes, and zip tie them together. Worked out great. Use C3 LEDs on these. If you hang on a second, I'll grab my Megatree star and show you that one. That's the largest star that I've done with this. This is my Megatree star. This is a 3-level star. Outside star is 36 inches. Even at that length, this thing is still pretty strong. Like I say, the longer you get with working with this wire, I'm not going to say the weaker it gets, but the more flexible it gets. You zip tie these 3 levels together, it still makes a very strong star. This thing and my spinners, they withstood over 40-mile-an-hour winds this year. It was no damage at all. And this is one of my spinners. Now this is a design I was pretty proud of that I came up with. This uses the same technique that I just showed you, except follow the pattern of the spinner, and I calculated it out to where the width between the 2 edges here was the same width as a Boscoyo mounting strip. When I got through with the frame, I zip tied the mounting strips on there, and it allowed me to pop lights right in. Made it very convenient. This is great. If you have a light go bad, you can pop it right out, replace it, pop it right back in. Quick and easy. And all the pixels, you know, obviously using the strips, all the pixels are perfectly spaced and everything. And this one takes that technique even to a higher level. This is my Bethlehem star. Use the same technique on this as I used on the spinners. It's basically two Bethlehem stars, one inside the other, width between them. Again, is the same width as a Boscoyo strip. Zip tie the strips on and you pop the lights right in and right back out. Okay, this is the template for my Bethlehem star. As you can see, it's like I said, it's actually one star inside the other, two separate stars, and the Boscoyo strips, once you zip tie them on, connect the stars together. And this is the template for my spinners. I made two of those this year, well, for 2015. As you can see, it just goes on the outline of the outside of each leg of it. And again, it's the width of a Boscoyo strip, so they zip tie right onto it. These are 48-inch spinners. And then we move over here to the other corner, a little darker over here. This is the template for my snowflake. Again, you can do what you want. I don't recommend snowflakes with this technique because there's a whole lot of bends to them. But it does make a good snowflakes. All right, guys. So that's my how-to video on using the heavy gauge galvanized steel wire. Hope you guys get some use out of this. Thanks for watching.